Join me today as we talk about the 1986 movie Highlander. This is the Geek Cabal channel. My name's Bobbie, and today we're going to be talking about the movie Highlander and some other things related to the movie. So, um, I have to assume that most of the people that watch this channel regularly know what this movie is, have at least heard of it. But if you have not, it is a movie starring, let's see, we have Christopher Lambert is our main character, Connor MacLeod. Clancy Brown is the main antagonist, the Kurgan. And Sean Connery is Juan Sanchez Villalobos Ramirez, who at the time we meet him is over 2,000 years old. So, and there's various other actors in the movie, obviously. Interesting point of note on that front. One of the gentlemen who has a small part in the movie, but is tied to the main events, is the guy who plays Captain Panaka in the Star Wars prequels. So, what's it all about? The movie centers around a few characters who are immortal, who have been living through the ages. They're immortal so long as they don't have their head chopped off. That will kill them. And so they collectively are questing for the prize, which is what the last of them left alive will receive when they're the last of them. So, to facilitate this, they use swords and fight each other to the death. And whenever one of them cuts the head off one of the others, they absorb all their power and knowledge in a massive display of electricity and explosions and such. So, like I said, the movie centers around a few characters. Connor has been alive for hundreds of years. He's born in Scotland, the Highlands, hence the name the Highlander. And he's been living down through the ages. He is initially singled out by the Kurgan, and the Kurgan is another immortal from the steppes of Russia, and he's very brutal, and he's very he's physically intimidating because Clancy Brown's a tall guy, big guy, and he he's obviously trying to win. See, because you kind of get the impression in this movie that not all the immortals are actually out to finish the game, because some of them are friends with some of the other immortals, and they know that to win, there can be only one. So, and this is kind of fleshed out more in the sequels and the TV show and the animated series. Not so much the anime movie. But, so what you have is the movie doesn't build the mythology like the later entries do. We see glimpses of the past, primarily whenever Connor as just before he becomes an immortal. These people that are destined to be immortals, it's whenever they die a violent death, that from that point forward they'll come back from that, and then that's how they'll appear. They'll be that age and everything for the rest of time. So like Ramirez, looks like an older Sean Connery because he would have been an older man whenever he died. I believe the official story is he was crushed by a cart full of rocks or something to that effect. They don't actually say that in the movie. I looked that up online years and years ago. Don't know where it came from. So he takes it upon himself to train Connor MacLeod and tries to warn him because he's in a relationship with a woman, and part of the thing is they can't have kids. And obviously he's going to outlive her. And Ramirez tries to warn him that in his, thousands of years of existence, he's only ever loved 3 women, and it ended in, tears every time because obviously he outlived them. So he tries to advise Connor, if he really loves her, to walk away from her because they'll never have kids. She's just going to grow old and die in his arms, which is what happens. And there's a battle back in the olden days before Connor becomes an immortal. The Kurgan knows about him and wants to just, take him out right here and now. So he joins the opposing side and, tells that clan, he'll fight for them and everything, but remember, Connor's his. And so, like, literally the men in the other army are running away from Connor. They won't fight him. Then the Kurgan shows up, stabs him, and because he has to make him an immortal before he can kill him, and then gets ready to take his head, and then a bunch of guys grab him, and then Connor comes back, and he's clearly was on death's doorstep, and then he's miraculously fine. So the whole village accuses him of being a witch and drives him out, and then meets up with Heather, and lives life with her. One day, whenever Ramirez trains him, and then one day when he's gone, the Kurgan comes, kills Ramirez, and you find out later on that he had his way with Heather as well. So this is all set against the backdrop of in the modern day in New York City. It opens with Connor at a wrestling match where the immortals can detect whenever another immortal is nearby. They get a vague, like a spider sense is tingling kind of thing. There's a sound effect they have for it that kind of conveys some vague, some sense is tingling in their mind. And so he detects that and goes down to the parking garage and fights a guy named Amon Facile, kills him, takes his head. And then you see the Kurgan driving into New York City as there's a radio report coming on about the guy, and it's like a body which at this point has no name, and the Kurgan's like, I know his name, because there's only a handful of them left. And so now is the time of the gathering when they'll all be drawn together to the one place to fight it out for the prize. And so once that happens, there's 3 of them left. There's Connor, the Kurgan, and the other gentleman whose name I don't recall off the top of my head. And you can tell that he and Connor are friends because they go and they talk to each other at one point. And it's obvious that they really don't want to fight each other. But then the Kurgan ends up taking his head anyway. So then it comes down to Connor and the Kurgan. And while this is all going on, the police are investigating the initial murder. And Connor's cover story is that he's a guy named Nash who deals in antiquities. And because of course he does, because he's got a lot of them. And so he's been living at this same building for centuries, as one of the police guys in the computer lab figures out, because he compares the signatures of all the previous owners. Russell Nash, that was his name, and is able to take letters from all the other names, spell out Russell Nash, then compare it to that signature, and it's identical. And so the tech lab figures out that this guy's got to be hundreds of years old and just kind of chilling there in New York City in this building. And the woman who's investigating it realizes through her own investigations that he takes the name of, kids that died in childbirth, and so no one's going to miss the name. And he confesses to her, and then to prove it, stabs himself, and, then the wound heals, and he's just fine. And he explains the whole deal with the other immortals, and the fact that it's, down to him and the Kurgan now. So it's kind of vague up to that point as to what the prize actually is. So at the end of the movie, you find out. And it comes down to the fight between the two of them ultimately. Oh, there's a lot of great scenes in between, particularly the church scene. The Kurgan has some good lines in there. So, yeah. So, spoiler alert for a movie from 1986: the good guy wins, and the end takes the Kurgan's head. He's the last one. He claims the prize, and at that point, he realizes that he's mortal now, and he'll grow old and die. He can have kids, and but he can also like hear the thoughts of other people and like understand what they're really driving at. And so he talks about, you know, trying to help people achieve peace and, you know, scientific advancement and things like that. And it's kind of funny because I think they actually stick to that for the backstory for Highlander 2 if you really think it through. Oh, Highlander 2. That's a whole other video. But yeah, so he has the prize now, and then that's the end of the movie. So the biggest problem with the movie, or rather with everything that came after the movie, is you have to ignore the end of the movie for anything else to be possible. And we talked about this in the franchise fixes video, where we talked about the Highlander series. And because all that would need to be done is to take out the wording of this being, you know, the last of them fighting it out here, which ultimately the franchise kind of takes two different prongs and then kind of merges the two, because what ends up happening is Highlander 2 takes place in the future, where Connor helped develop a shield around the Earth because the ozone layer was gone to protect from ultraviolet radiation. But now people believe that the ozone layer has repaired itself and the shield needs to be brought down, because the people that control the shield are just using it to lord over other people because they control the most important resource on the planet. Also, somewhere in there, depending on which version of the movie you watch, you find out the Immortals are either aliens or from the distant past sent to the future. The version that's on Amazon goes with the distant past theory, so it's probably the director's cut. Yeah, I mean, either way, it doesn't make any sense at all, but, you know, you got what's going on there. So Connor, you know, Brenda's dead, he's an old man, and then his enemy, General Katana, played by Michael Ironside, sends assassins to go kill him. They're also immortals. And they, by going there and him killing one of them, he becomes young again, and then he kills the other one. And the whole deal was, if you go by it's them from the past, the problem was, until he was dead, he always had the option to come back to the past, would regain his youth, and then would be pardoned, because this is a sentence, they were rebels against General Katana, meaning that he could, you know, live out his life in peace. I mean, he'd be an immortal still, but again, it doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense. So Michael Ironside basically like gets impatient, even though he's in the past, and so events in the future should not happen in a linear fashion to him. Like, he should just be able to fast forward the video to when Connor's just dead. But, you know, again, doesn't make any sense. There, it actually makes more sense if they're aliens, kind of, but that's just unfulfilling. So a lot of reasons you should basically just ignore part 2. He somehow brings Ramirez back to life. And then Michael Ironside shows up on Earth. That's where Connor is like, hey, so what are you doing, dude? Like, I was going to just die. I was old. I was right there. And now I'm back to square one. Immortal, again, because of you. You caused all this. Congratulations. So, he ends up killing Michael Ironside at the end and destroying the shield. So, the second one is not great. The third one backs up to the modern day. The third one goes with the idea of Connor realizes he's not actually the last one, There are a few other immortals who got trapped in a cave in Japan way back in the day. The main one being Mario Van Peebles' character. And they've been stuck there for like 400 years because he killed a guy who had magic powers. So now he has magic powers. And he gets loose, kills one of his subordinates, sends the other one after Connor. Connor kills him. Then he teleports to New York, finds Connor. Ultimately, the two of them fight it out. Connor kills him. Now, supposedly, he's the last one. Until the TV series needed to be made. So then the TV series is like, well, let's stop this foolishness of saying they're the last ones. Let's say there's hundreds, maybe thousands of them left. And ultimately, there's a group that's keeping track of all of them called the Watchers. And the main character is going to be Duncan MacLeod. It's from the same clan, but a few hundred years younger. He and Connor know each other. They're friends. And the events of the previous movies happened. They just weren't The Gathering. And of course, Highlander 2's totally ignored. So then the fourth movie, Highlander Endgame, was that actually what it was called? I think that's what it's called. Maybe. Might be wrong on that. They incorporate all the lore from the show and the movies, 1 and 3 anyway, and they come up with a character who was part of Connor's clan, who was a priest, and Connor killed him because they burned his mother at the stake, saying she was a witch, because they say he's possessed by the devil, that's why he's immortal. And so he was killed by Connor and has since then been out for revenge. And he has just been like a one-man murder machine against other immortals, because the Watchers kind of keep track of this sort of thing to judge like relative power levels and things like that. You see that Connor and Duncan have killed in the ballpark of about 200 immortals, whereas this guy, who what was his name? I can't remember. He's played by Bruce Payne. He, Gabriel, maybe? Probably wrong on that. Whereas he's killed like well over 650. And as old Joe Dawson tries to explain to Connor, like, you're not even in this guy's league. Like, forget it. This guy will just murder you. And the only reason he hasn't is because he's busy torturing you. So, you find out that throughout the years, the various women from the other movies that it's shown that Connor has been affectionate for, he's the one that's killed them. Jacob Kell, that was his name. So like his secretary in the first movie, she was a girl. Connor saved her as a girl from in World War II from the Germans. And so he's raised her as his daughter and everything, and she still works for him. And I think she's killed in a bomb of some kind. And like I said, just the various other women that he's had a thing for, Kell's killed all of them. So that one ultimately is a passing of the torch movie, where Connor puts Duncan in a situation where he basically has to kill him, and then with their combined powers take out Kell, which he does at the end. If you ever watch the trailers for this movie, I should just warn you, there's all kinds of misleading scenes in them. There's several scenes of Kell using all kinds of magic powers that he does not possess in the movie at all. And I've seen like 3 different cuts of the movie. He doesn't have them in any of them. So, yeah, don't know why those scenes were in the trailer, because they're not in the movie. And there are definitely 2 different endings to the movie, because there's a woman who Duncan used to love, who's with Jacob Kell, and he has like a posse of other immortals that he's been using to take out the competition. And there comes a moment where he cleans the slate and makes them all out, and depending on which version of the movie you watch, he either kills her or doesn't kill her. And if he doesn't kill her at the end of the movie, Duncan finds her again, and she's just like, I don't know why he spared me, but for whatever reason he made his choice. Whereas the other version, I think he mourns that she's gone. So, just depends on which version of the movie you watch. And then there's Highlander the Source, which I'm not going to talk about because it's absolute trash. So, the Highlander TV series is pretty good in my opinion. I mean, it meanders. It went on for like 7 seasons. The end of the first season is pretty brutal. I'm not going to lie, it brought a tear to my eye. You had Duncan, he's living with this woman named Tessa. He's in love with her. She runs I think an art gallery, if I remember right. So she goes through the whole first season dodging the various immortal wackos who try to use her as leverage against Duncan, you know, abducting her and everything else and putting her in mortal peril. So in the season finale, she is taken captive sorry, by this guy who's hunting down the immortals that you find is the first time we find out about the Watchers. And Duncan goes in, it's a trap, but he's able to kill the guy because he brings people in, like uses night vision, you know, shuts off lights, uses night vision. Connor realizes what's happening, pulls out some matches and strikes him up, so he blinds the guy because of how night vision goggles work, and then kills him. And then tells Tessa, and I don't remember why Richie was there. It was a kid that broke into their place, and Duncan kind of took him under his wing to kind of put him on the right path. I don't remember why he was there. I don't remember if he came with Duncan or if he'd also been taken captive, but he tells them both to go out to the car. He's going to, like, search through this guy's stuff, and, you know, finds all the stuff about the Watchers and some discs and some other stuff. And as he's doing all this, some random crackhead comes up, shoots both of them. Cuts to commercial. It was on USA. They were running the whole series, you know, and was watching it for the first time. So comes back. Well, Duncan's there in Tessa's art gallery, and Richie's there. So I'm thinking, well, okay, and they got shot, but they're fine, right? Right? And then the montage begins of various scenes from throughout the season with Tessa, while Dust in the Wind begins playing, and it all clicks, and it's like, oh, no. Some random crackhead killed this nice lady on this show, and now Kansas, Dust in the Wind. Yep, brought a tear to my eye. And Duncan's just like, well, Richie, sell it off. Turns out Richie was one of those people that was destined to become an immortal, so whenever he died, he resurrected as an immortal. Then a short while later, Richie finds the guy that shot him. And he's like, oh, I've reformed, man. My family, I'm a cook now. And Richie's like, yeah, I don't give a shit. And throws him off like a 3-story building, kills him. And I was like, yeah, I get it. So, yeah. And then it goes on for several seasons, and yeah. Then there's an animated series out there that takes place thousands of years in the future, where, like, the world's been devastated. There's one immortal that rules over a lot of it named Cortan. And because it's a kid's cartoon, they made it so that the immortals could, like, willingly give up their immortality instead of having to lose their head. And although they all still have swords, and I'm pretty sure there's some people that still lose their heads, it just happens off screen because it's a kid's cartoon. Somehow Ramirez is back to life. There's a new younger kid who's another immortal. And yeah, it's all about trying to overthrow Cortan. So, I didn't watch all of it. I really should finish it someday. But then there's an anime movie that is like a standalone where there's a Scottish guy back in, like, Roman times who falls this Roman general, and then he kills the dude's wife, and the Roman general's an immortal, and so is the Scottish guy, and so it's the two of them fighting through the centuries into the future, because this guy is just single-mindedly, like, wants to destroy this Roman general, for killing his wife. And it's been a while since I've seen it. It's not on, I don't think it's on streaming, because I looked it up the other day. Might be able to rent it on Amazon Prime. I've got to see if I still got my DVD of it. I'll bust it out and watch it here one of these days. But anyway, so the franchise kind of meanders and goes all over the place, but the main movie is excellent. The soundtrack is awesome. It's by Queen. Several songs on it. I know everyone goes for Princes of the Universe. That's the main theme song. Personally, my favorite of the songs is Who Wants to Live Forever, because it's very, very, very on point for the movie, and has its surges and ebbs and flows, and it's very it's really good, and all the more tragic because what happened to Freddie Mercury. But I think that's probably my favorite song from the soundtrack. And then, like, the camera work is really odd in this movie. You've got a lot of really weird shots. Like, normally the camera, this is where I kind of wish I'd did film studies so I could tell you what the technical terms for this are. But normally the camera's on, like, a little bit below where I've got this filming at the moment, so you can see most people's upper torsos, and, or we have far away shots so you can see their whole body. This has random shots where it's like low to the ground, looking up at things, and then tracking with people. There's a lot of like tracking with characters as they're moving to give you this weird sense of motion. There's a shot in the church where the Kurgan's there, and he's like, I think he's looking up at the ceiling, and instead of it being like a straight on shot of him sitting in the pew, it's like from the ground looking up to the top of the church, with him and the priest here. Just a lot of really interesting shots. Most of the sword fights are from a distance so you can see everything that's happening. Now, I can't vouch for the authenticity of the moves and everything. I'll leave that to other experts, though I would temper whatever they say with the knowledge that these are people fighting that can't be killed other than by a single particular, move. So their sword fighting technique just might be different if you're not concerned about certain things. Just saying. So yeah, it's an interesting shot movie. Russell Mulcahy's the director. So yeah, overall though, great movie. We're talking like 8.5, 9 out of 10. The sequels, not so much. 2 is probably one of the more disappointing sequels ever. 5 is just trash. 3 and 4 are at least watchable. I started watching 2 again, like it auto started after this because I was watching this on Amazon Prime, and it's not as bad as I remember, but I didn't get very far into it, so like the bad might have eventually shown up. I'm going to watch the rest of it, and we'll do a video on that somewhere in the near future. But yeah, it's an excellent movie. It's debatable whether or not there should have just been the one, because like some of the later additions to the lore are good, like with the Watchers, and the TV show was good. And I thought the 4th movie was decent in trying to merge everything up to that point. The cartoon's silly. It's, kids cartoon based on an R-rated movie franchise. Kind of like how in the 90s, Kenner was like, hey, let's make a bunch of movies based on the Alien, Predator, and Terminator movie franchise. Let's make toys based on those for kids. And no one at any point stood up and said, sir, kids can't watch those movies in theaters. But they're like, let's do it anyway. So, yeah. It's kind of like that. But anyway, let me know what you guys think. Have you seen the movie before? Is this going to inspire you to watch the movie? What did you think of the movie? Is there any aspect of it that I didn't mention that you thought was noteworthy? What about the other movies in the franchise? Have you seen any of them? What do you think of them? Is 5 the absolute dumpster fire I remember it being the one time I watched it kind of on TV? Is 2 one of the more disappointing sequels ever made? Or in hindsight, is it not so bad? Let me know things like that. Like, share, subscribe. That's how sharing and commenting are the best ways to help us grow the channel. We always appreciate it, and appreciate all of you who have stuck with us up to this point, and hopefully you continue sticking with us. But yeah, that's about all I got. So just remember, In the end, there can be only one.